Hello friends, I hope you're all doing well. So this is gonna be a April, May, June wrap up. Oh my god, too many months that I have not been filming now. And my name is Will, this channel's Ember Reads. Welcome, let's talk about the books I read. I showered this morning and my hair's still a little wet, but I'm sure it will dry throughout filming this video. Usually every single month I write a little bit about the book that I've read so that I can remember it for my wrap-ups. And see, for the last few months I haven't been doing that. And I keep saying I should be better at doing these wrap-ups, like just making it better quality and making me better at talking, but I don't know if it's ever gonna happen, unfortunately. So there's a lot of books to talk about, and it's probably gonna go quite fast because I haven't written down anything about it. I'm not gonna be an excellent reviewer, but I still really like just talking about the books and, you know, doing a little wrap-up. The first book that I read was ASL by Jan Thornton. This was actually gifted to me as an ARC, and I waited very long waits to actually read it. I didn't realize ASL stood for age, sex, language. I'm not an internet girly, but this follows three trans women who knew each other as kids virtually because they were part of making this online game together, and they were very committed to making it happen. And a bunch of the first part is just their conversations. It jumps right into their online chats, which personally I found really hard to get into and fully grasp the story, or like, what is it about? I didn't know much about the story before I picked it up. And then as you read, you follow them when they're grown up. They're all in their 30s, I believe, and sort of where they ended up and how the experience of connecting with each other and the game lingers on in their life. They're all so bad at communicating in the absolutely most like frustrating way, and it really drove me crazy to just like, I kept nitpicking at, oh, you should be communicating like this, or you should do this because this is what's good for you, but they have so few like coping skills. I think in general, one of them works at a bank, one of them works still, I think, with like coding, and one of them is like a stay-at-home cam girl, I believe, and their stories kind of do intertwine. This was very different from what I experienced, or like what I thought. I thought it would be more like a queer tomorrow, but it is very authentic to, I think, the author and the language and the experience of the characters that Jan has created. Like, it is really a book for the nerdy trans femmes of the world, and I absolutely love that for this book. It wasn't for me. I'm curious to pick up other works by the author. Like, my interest was definitely piqued, and it is quite slow. It doesn't have a lot of plot necessarily, but I was very committed to figuring out what was going to happen. I guess I had bigger hopes for the ending, maybe it turning like speculative or making the story more complex in a way, but it was just about these characters. I gave it 3.5 stars. Solid read. Then I picked up another ARC that I got that's being released. Again, didn't prep for this video. It's being released this date, and it's this book, I Can Fix Her, by Ray Wild. This is a short sci-fi horror novella about this woman who is seeing her ex for the first time in a long time. They've had a very like toxic and tumultuous relationship, and they meet at a bar, they go home together, and in the book the day keeps repeating in different ways, and it just becomes wilder and wilder, a more warped reality as the days go on. I think, oh, it doesn't keep repeating, it's like over a week. The days just keep getting wilder and wilder, and then the book just gets crazy by the end in a way that I really appreciated. I think this book, like their language is written kind of like very easy to understand, simple language, but it goes in a so crazy that I really appreciate it. Like, it was my type of read, even though I would have liked the author maybe to do more with the language itself, because there is a lot of cliches in it. But yeah, the sci-fi element is crazy. I will definitely like order this book for the bookstore. I'm Do I remember what I wrote about it? I probably can check it out actually because it's an arc. I wrote a review. Oh, I actually wrote in my review, the way the entirety of the story and the world revolved around Johnny's emotional attachment to Alice was so exciting to read. The feelings evoked while reading will stay with me for quite a while. Okay, apparently not long enough for me to film this video, but it is like about this like toxic lesbian attachment they have to each other. It plays out in the sci-fi elements. Very cool book, but also written kind of like Wattpad literature. I gave it like 4 stars maybe? 3 point something? 4 stars. Cool. Moving on. Then I read Done with Demons. This is a comic book released by Silver Sprocket. I ended up reading this because we were doing a release party for the author at the pond, which was so cute. Everyone dressed like grandmas, and we did really cute like decor. One room was like health themed, one room was grandma chic themed. This follows like this demon mayor who's been cast out of hell and lands on the doorstep of this grandma, and it's about like their relationship, their banter. Every single page is kind of like its individual comic, but then all the stories are also connected throughout it, and it is like a full story as well, which I think is a really inspiring concept for me as someone who writes or does like short form comics. But seeing this, I could definitely connect it into like a bigger story in the future, and I found that very inspiring. I didn't rate this just because I know the person, and I get like weird in my head when I've like met the author of something, you know, like I feel like I can't view it objectively anymore because I get so excited about the work itself. But highly recommend this. It's just like a lot of fun, and the illustration style is, yeah, it's just very cute. And the demons look absolutely batshit crazy. And another book that I barely remember anything about, Virus. I don't know how I found this book, but I saw that Sean also read it recently, which is kind of fun. This is a mix of different types. It's very speculative in the way it's constructed and some of the reality things that are happening. And there's a part that's like connecting throughout the story of this mermaid or like sea creature sitting on a rock, narrating the story a little bit. But then there's also a bunch of spells in here, witchy spells for protecting yourself against male artists and male violence, or there's a spell for like protecting queer space, for example. And I was like, oh my gosh, should I just do this spell outside of the pond? Like, that'd be so cool. And then there's a lot of retellings of women who have been wronged by men, and both like the reimaginings of their story. And I think there was a part in the back, I think this is the reason why I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.75 stars. I really liked this when I was like reading it, like my reading experience of it was very good. But there's a part in the back where there's a person who meets Mackenzie Wark, which I associate with a trans woman, and I don't know if it would be anyone else. I didn't understand that part, but in the book, she's like a man. And that's like where I got a little bit lost, because it is like a revenge story on her, but I associate it with the author, but I feel like it must have been someone else. The book is called Virus, and there's different like collages and illustrations of Virus in the book as well. Really enjoyed the spells. There's a lot of good stuff. If you like weird, speculative, experimental literature, like I highly recommend this. Then for the book club at the pond, we read Crip Kinship by Shaida Kafai. This is a story about a Sins Invalid performance group in San Francisco that is for Black, Indigenous, people of color, queer, disabled, neurodivergent, and it talks about like their performance pieces, how they made Sins Invalid happen, their connection to disability justice, how they practice that through art, and also how to, I don't know, approach like making mistakes or creating like a community, and how that was like built up and how they use it and the power of it within both individuals but also for the world, like how they can make art so accessible in such a cool way. So yeah, this was really inspiring. I'm really glad I read it. I was expecting there maybe to be like more explanations of, for example, individual like art pieces and what the meaning was, and because I'm really interested in like the art aspect of it, but it was more about like, I guess, an introduction to Sins Invalid, which I really did appreciate because I didn't know about it in advance either, but I think it was very simple in terms of the disability justice aspect. Like, as someone who's read disability justice like books and theory before, it didn't feel like new. It was very simply written. It's quite repetitive in the language that it uses, but I still really like appreciated this book because everything that's in it is good. The author would also write, like, every time there was a person who used multiple pronouns, they would write out all the pronouns in the sentence, which I found bothersome because I don't think it's necessary. I gave it 3.75 stars. I think, for example, like Dreaming Disability Justice was care work. Dreaming Disability Justice is more up my alley in terms of books about disability justice and such. They have a lot of crossover, I think. But yeah, I appreciated this and the discussion we had. And then I listened to an audiobook called Softcore by Brittany Newell. This follows this like youngish, I guess, sex worker and dancer. In the beginning of the book, her boyfriend leaves her and she doesn't really know where he's gone. It's not like he broke up with her. He's just kind of disappeared for a little bit. And so she gets this job as like a stripper at this club, and the book is sort of just about that, like her perception of the people that are there, her relationship to her boyfriend, people in general, the way she has like trauma about certain things. And it's a strange book because it doesn't really have any plots, and I'm not sure what the point of the book per se is. I wish it was a lot more queer. There are just tidbits that are really good, but for me, this was just not my type of book. I was expecting it to be different, maybe more impactful, or maybe more plot that I felt connected to. I don't think this is a bad book by any means. It was just not for me. And I think the audiobook was just fine, like the narrator's just fine, but definitely not like a favorite in terms of audiobook narrators. But yeah, I made it through. I think it did struggle to keep my attention a little bit, to be honest. She was very paranoid, the main character, and I understand why. Like, she keeps seeing her boyfriend in other people. And there's, I think, individual conversations that I really appreciated. I think the characters in this are very well done and fleshed out, like the character work. I just wanted there to be more point, more plot. I guess I wish I understood the book a bit more, like what the author was trying to do, but it was just fine. Then I read realistic fiction. At the time I read this, it was like a new release because I've been keeping my eye out on Little Puss Press, a press created by Kat Fitzpatrick and Casey Platt, and this was like one of their new releases. This is by, have I been saying the author? I don't know. Anton Salomnik. This is a short story collection following mainly, I think, trans men, and they read as very autistic to me in the book, but I don't know if other people will feel that way. And they're all sort of about the main character having some sort of idea about what they want to do with their life, something that they're obsessed with, whether it be an idea of something they want to achieve, or a fandom, or a thing that they're obsessed with, even when it comes like a fiction version of either like a reality TV, or or a manga, or whether it's an idea of wanting to become a senator. Like, there is something in here, and it's sort of how that alters their life and how fiction becomes their reality, and the two merge. Like, I think it's an interesting theme that goes throughout it, even though they're not all like connected. One character you meet twice, the one who wants to become like senator, he's a very unlikable character. I feel a lot of them are quite unlikable characters. They make weird choices, and it's not like they're not like the trans people who are very embedded in queer culture and generally care about being like woke. I hate using that word, like up to date, politically and socially aware when it comes to queerness and their place in society. They're just kind of trans and not necessarily like connected to the community, which creates like a lot of interesting thought patterns and reflections. This is really funny. Like, there's so many good parts of this book. I enjoyed it a lot, and I just enjoyed the uniqueness of the writing. It just felt, yeah, very, very unique in a very casual and easy to read way. Like, I enjoyed this a lot, and I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. I think there was something about it that just really resonated with me. They go through such journeys. I think the first one starts off with someone wanting, like, really wanting to work at what is it called, like just like a construction site where they harvest like minerals in the ground, like a whole cave. What is it called? Miner. He just really wants to work as a miner. Yeah, I highly recommended this. I think it was just really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Again, wish I wrote down notes so I could have been more specific. Then I did a reading vlog. I'm not going to talk about them because I'm trying to keep this video concise, and I go in depth on pretty much all of these books in that video. Reading pink and black books, queer books. I enjoyed all of these quite a bit, and 2 5 stars. So, I just made the weirdest farting noise with my mouth. So I recommend checking that out if you want to know more about these 3 books. Throughout all of this, I listened to the audiobook for Model Home by River Solomon, because I also listened to Sorrowland by River Solomon, and I remember my reading or listening experience of Sorrowland was so good, and I remembered it as vividly as if I'd read the book physically, and that's why I decided to listen to Model Home as well, hoping to have the similar experience, and I really enjoyed it. The narrator, fabulous, really good. And this is a haunted house story. In the beginning of the book, we learned that our main character's mom and dad has died, and they're going back home to basically take care of the situation, the funeral, see what happened, you know? And we get a bunch of like flashbacks and backstory to them growing up in this home. They grew up in basically a white suburban neighborhood, and this family, being a black family, they had a very nice house, and things happen that made the characters feel as if the house was haunted in various ways. People get hurt accidentally, stuff and things like that. Weird things would happen. And so when the parents die, they believe that it's because the house is haunted. It's such a good book. Like, the horror, the natural, what's it called? The societal, social horror of being a marginalized person, a black person, a queer person, a disabled person in the US, like the horrors of living that experience with monsters and supernatural ideas, the concept of those mixed together was done so incredibly well, I think. I think River Solomon is a incredibly talented writer, and the characters were super distinct. Like, their dynamic between these 3 siblings that grew up was amazing. The mother in the family, the way she was so respectful towards our main characters, the love she showed for them, about them being different, the way they thought about their gender. They were like switching genders like regularly as a kid and always had their back, but the complexity of this like family dynamic and the way it unfolds is just really, really good. I highly recommend it. Also highly recommend the audiobook, which was really phenomenal. I surprisingly loved the ending. I gave it 4.75 stars. I think there was maybe just a little something missing that I can't like quite put my finger on to make it a favorite. I think it's very possible if I reread it physically, I could give it a 5 stars. But yeah, I also think that the queerness was done really well. I think sometimes with newer releases now, they're trying to be so accurate that it becomes almost annoying to read queer stuff, because I'm like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just done very in a humane, seamless way, the way all these concepts are incorporated into the story. Highly recommend. Then I read Double Teenage by Johnny Murphy. This was a book that I got a very long time ago because I read, oh my god, it's called Talking Animals, during a reading slump many, many years ago, and I was like, okay, I need to read more stuff by this author. And so I picked this up, and then I didn't end up getting to it. And I've been trying to be better at reading more books by authors that I've already loved books from. So I was thinking I would really like this. It's super different from Talking Animals, which is, Talking Animals, I just highly recommend that book. It's so sarcastic, so bizarre. It's like about this llama who has an alpaca friend, and they live in New York, and it's sort of like an adult version of Zootopia or Zootropolis or whatever it's called, with like the best climate change commentary. Really like that book. So I wanted to read something else by this author because that book was just really strange. This was, I think a lot of people would actually really like this. If you like different feminist books, like that are strong on the feminist like aspects of it, I actually think you'd really like this, but it was just maybe not for me. You follow these 2 girls that grow up in this small town in New Mexico, and they connect over musical theater, and then the characters sort of drift apart at some point. and then sort of ish come back together, and you follow their life, the choices they make, the inner turmoil they're going through, the things that they blame themselves for, and their relationship to this one serial killer that is in this town. I think it is referencing a very specific situation or crime that happened that I'm not familiar with in this town. It says it's also a definitive book about NAFTA, the Ciudad Juarez femicides, spectacular serial killings, culture and class, and the comfort media lull of repetition. Yeah, I just think that like if you're familiar with the things that happen, the serial killings in New Mexico, if you are more interested in like a coming of age feminist story, I actually highly recommend this one. The sentences and everything, I can tell it's well written. I just don't think this was a book for me. Gave it 3.5 stars. Like it was really just fine, but I think a lot of the theory aspects of it didn't quite stick in my mind as well as I'd hoped. Next, I picked up Romeo Seahorse. This was part of the May book club at the Pond. We're now reading like Cypher Press's books, which I'm always like super excited for because I've given every Cypher Press book that I've ever read 4 or 5 stars. So, and this was no different. Give it 4 stars. Also, we got the chance to have a reading and Q&A with the author later because he reached out, which was so cool. The author is like so cool, way cooler than I. This is a sort of like autofiction in a way. It's very much based on the author's life. Nikolai Tangelange, which is a Danish author but lives in Berlin. This is a journey of Romeo, who during COVID goes on to participate in a lot of chemsex, and it's very graphic, like the fisting, the use of Seahorse, which is like this huge dildo, talks about drugs and cruising and hookup culture within certain like gay male spaces. But it's also about like the themes are mostly around love and desire and desiring without abandon. You know, this correlation with Romeo, who wants Juliet but doesn't actually know anything about love. He just wants to be, I guess, a martyr in some way. And it is about like relating to that character and wanting to be that. So it's on the surface like a very graphic book, but it is just so much more, like the themes. It also talks about HIV. It's really good. I highly recommend it, but it is quite graphic, so you should be warned for that. There's also like mention of sexual assaults, but I highly recommend it. I think the language was really for me. It's quite short. The text just kind of like runs on like in these paragraphs, but there is a lot of very short chapters. I recommend. Then I picked up Pluralities by Avi Silver. This is a speculative work of fiction following 2 different perspectives. One, you're exploring this person who is figuring out their identity. This person who was AFAB, who is trying to come to terms with maybe being non-binary, and what does that feel like? And a lot of that is like their relationship to their mother, like, and their family at large, and what they want out of life. And when they meet this trans man who they have a connection with, it also spurs like a lot of emotions within them. The other chapters we're following this space prince, or prince who's exploring space. He's run away from his responsibilities to be in space. And so these 2 perspectives, like the themes of them, sort of merge in a really interesting way. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had, or like speculation about how they're merged and what the author was thinking, because there is a lot of interpretation to be done, because the space prince's perspective is very like, I don't know, a little bit children's story, classical sci-fi-y written, but the things he struggles with, you can attribute it to certain inner turmoil that the main character is going through. I just thought it was a really interesting book. I really appreciated reading this because of the complexity of how you think about your gender, especially when you're non-binary. I gave it 4 stars. It was such a unique book about the coming of age non-binary wise. Oh, I forgot there's a very important part of this book. The main character, when they touch someone, they can see like something that happens to that person in the future, which is just like a tiny part of like that storyline that's actually speculative in some way. It's more just the way that it's written that feels like a speculative work. Then I listened to an audiobook arc that I got called The Lilac People by Milo Todd. This is actually historical fiction. Oh my god, who am I? That's reading historical fiction? I don't know her. But I did, and I actually really, really liked it. it takes place right after World War II, and you're following this two people who, one of them who is trans, I believe, they're living in this home, like on the countryside, and they've been stealth or hiding throughout World War II in Germany. And the plot sets off when they find a body or a person who is also a trans man who's escaped from one of these like concentration camps after the war. This whole situation complicates their future and how they move forward. And there's a lot of flashbacks to the past, to I guess how progressive Germany was in a way for its time before dictatorship like happened and the World War set off. And so it's a very eerie book, honestly, to read at this time because of when seeing how Germany was before World War II. It feels like similar to, you know, our today's events in a very uncomfortable way. And I think the author has been very, what is it called, deliberate with how he made those like connections in this historical work. Like I thought it was really well done and really jarring, and there was I was crying at many points in this book, to be honest, because it is really tough to read about, but there's also so much like hope and support in the book. And the most frustrating part is just like, you know, the Americans when they come in and they're all like the good guys and they're still being like the fucking bad guys. I think it was just a really good book. The ending was great. Very emotional. I highly recommend it as like a trans historical fiction. And the audiobook was also really, really good, actually. How many stars did I give it? I gave it 4.25 stars. Then I read Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. This is, I guess, quiet horror. It's about this person who has gotten a divorce from her husband, and so she moves back home with her parents, and she just gets this job at a flower shop where she becomes infatuated with the woman working there who is hiding something. And the whole book is essentially written from the perspective of this plant, who has a murderous, devious intent upon the characters in the book. The mall that the flower shop is on is essentially deteriorating. It's falling apart because it's so old and it's meant to be torn down. And so the book feels very much like building tension, both romantically between these two characters, our main character and the owner of the flower shop, the plant who's like trying to enact some sort of nasty behavior. So it is all these factors that's making you feel like it's coming to a point in the book. I quite enjoy it. It's a fairly easy read. I think the repetitiveness of the voice of the plant being like, oh, you just wait, I have all these things that I planned, and oh, she did this just like I planned, or, you know, all these like, it was just a little bit overwhelming and too much at times. But like, this is just an enjoyable sapphic horror book. You know, it's not pushing you too hard. It was very easy to read, an enjoyable story. I'm glad I read it. I didn't plan to read this, but I ended up reading it because we ordered too many copies to the pond. I was supposed to order 3, but then I accidentally ordered 5. Still learning. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll just read it, you know, then I can recommend it. I can buy 1 copy, you know, problem solved. And I'm really glad I did read it. It was not a new favorite, but I always love reading like a good queer horror. I give it 3.5 stars. I guess I enjoyed like a little bit of the botanical nature of it as well, I think. Yeah. Yep. Oh my god, we only have 3 books left. Next, I listened to Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. I ended up listening to this because I was like, I need a good like summer read or audiobook listen. This felt very summery and I just decided to go for it. I listened to a snippet of the audiobook. So I ran out of memory on my card. So I had to switch to a different card, which is why I kept make the square look the same. Sunburn. So I listened to a snippet of the audiobook and the narrator is really, really good. She has this like strong Irish accent and the book takes place in a small Irish town. It reminds me, I've read a lot of books by in small towns lately, like small town vibes, kind of fun. It's a coming of age story about this girl who has a best friend that she really likes, and she knows he likes her, but she just sees him as a best friend, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their life, who they are, what they believe in. She's part of this like group of friends that are all girls, and the book starts off with her kind of like explaining how she feels about all of them, what type of characters there are. Like the characters in this book is very rich and detailed in their description, and her best friend, I want to call her Samantha, but that's not it. She's like obsessed with her, and it's so clear from the start that they both have feelings for each other, but they're teenagers, they have complicated family relationships that they still don't really like understand, and then they're still at home, you know? So it's a coming of age story with them figuring out all of this, figuring out their feelings for each other, the town and the gossip and their friend group. It's all part of like the story of them growing up, and it's a fairly simple story about like standing up for yourself, finding yourself, all these classical coming of age themes. I don't know, there's something about the book at the end. I just started crying. Like, I feel like I have a much harder time crying now than I used to, but I was bawling at the end, and I was listening to it as I was like walking to the pond. I was getting there late because this was opening, and then I arrived and I just like tears down my face, and I just needed to sit for a while because I was like so emotional, and I did not see it coming. Like throughout listening to this book, I was gonna give it like a 3 stars. It was just fine, but I get super emotional about my feelings about a book when the book makes me feel emotional about something, you know? So I ended up giving it 4.25 stars because I was just like not expecting it at all. I was not that into the book, but I just think it did what it wanted to do so expertly, and all the emotions, this very slow plot, little plot actually, throughout the book, just all of a sudden just came crashing over me, and I really appreciated that in the book. So I gave it 4.25 stars, even though this is the type of book that I would usually be like, not for me, and I did not think it would be this good. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. Also, yeah, it was a really good audiobook, very good audiobook experience, and summer read if you're looking for a good audiobook. We have 2 more books to talk about. This is Self-Made Man by Poppy C. Bright. I know Poppy C. Bright as kind of like one of the classic queer horror writers. I believe this was written in the 90s. Perhaps in the 90s. Late 90s. Oh, first published the year I was born. This is a short story collection of different of Poppy C. Bright's work. I was curious to check this out because they've also written Exquisite Corpse. I guess I discovered this at like a similar time that I was looking up like 80s, 90s queer literature along with like macho sluts and stuff, which I'm still gonna read, hopefully. What I like about this short story collection, like the stories, is that before every story, Poppy writes like an introduction to where the story was published and the thought process behind it, which I actually really like. More short stories should do that. But in general, this was just not for me. I gave it a 2.25 stars. It's clear that it's very well written. Poppy C. Bright can write. Bright can write, for sure. Most of the stories are from the perspective of the person perpetrating the harm, and often it is men that are being very violent, and quite a few of them towards queer people, which is just not something that I want to read about, to be honest. I don't need to get into the mind. I don't need to experience being the person who is doing that kind of violence and harm towards my community. Like, this is just not something that I would like to read about. Not all the stories are like that, but I think it's just left like a bad taste in my mouth, and I can see how there is like a point to it. Now Olaf is upset about something. Who knows what? Hello, exposure? Exposure? Just not for me, even though it is technically like a queer work. But language-wise, extremely well written. The last book I read was the June book club, Lákíríboto by Ayodele Olafintuade. Why don't I look up how to say these things? This is, yeah, another work by Cypher Press. Now I'm becoming weird. You follow this, I guess, family and community in Nigeria. It all starts because one of the characters' grandmother dies, who is her only caretaker. And so she's being sent off by this community chief to live somewhere else as like housemaid, together with this other person who is also being sent by their parents to live there. But at this family, the woman there, she is being forced to have kids, and the husband's really violent. It sets off this sort of revenge plot that the women in this community and in this family support each other to make happen, basically. It is a lot about like Nigerian culture and gender roles, how generations can continue to perpetrate harm against each other, even like mothers towards daughters, the dynamic that exists within both the family, their belief system about the roles of men and women and who they should be, and this like chief character. He's so threatened by this one aunt in the family who is a lesbian, and she is rich, and he hates her and he's jealous of her, and it creates so much hatred within him that just spreads. He's such a frustrating character, but I really enjoyed like our discussion of it. I thought it was very interesting. It's just very lesbian. This word Lákíríboto is like an older Yoruba word, basically in simple terms meaning lesbian or women who don't fuck with men. And as the author says in the beginning, all the characters are that in some sense or another, which I really love this definition of lesbian, by the way. Women who don't fuck with men. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I gave it 3.75 stars. I think because it was advertised as, or it says like it's a queer feminist revenge thriller, I was expecting there to be more tension and more of like the thriller feeling, even though the plot is quite thrillery. I didn't get like that feeling. It feels quite slow throughout it. And I think at the ending, everything happened a little bit too fast. The resolution, it was very satisfying to read, especially when you've been reading all these like horrible injustice. There's a lot of sexual assault in this, so be aware of that. I just wanted it to be like a little bit more intense with the feeling and the plot, and the resolution being slower, making more sense, having more lead up to that specific action. I don't know. So those are my thoughts. And that is my wrap up. Oh my god. Can you believe we did it? I wonder how long this is going to be. So July is a little crazy because next month, This is gonna start like an internship, which means that from August on, I will pretty much be working full time at the pond for 3 months, which I'm a little bit scared about because then I can't do stuff like this because it's a Friday and I can stay home for a couple hours to film this wrap up, and then I'm gonna go to the pond. Also, I'll just do like a little shameless plug. The pond now has a Libro FM partnership, what's called Indie Bookstore Partnership. So I will put a QR code here that you can scan and link it down below if you wanna support the pond by reading audiobooks. You know, it's something that anyone can do all over the world, even if you can't come to Copenhagen. So I would appreciate that. But yeah, shameless plug. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Let me know if you read any of these, your thoughts on them. Do you have any book recommendations for me or favorite books that you've read lately and you want to tell me about? I hope you all are having a great summer. Chat with me in the comments. I wish you all the best and take care of yourself and your loved ones. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.